For a moment, Rome holds its breath. The news travels in fragments, carried by hurried voices and half-finished sentences, each retelling, sharpening some edges and softening others. Julius Caesar is dead, killed in the Senate by men the city recognizes. The words arrive before their meeting settles, and in that gap, the city does something more dangerous than erupting. It waits. Streets fill, then stall. Conversations cluster, then thin. People look for cues. Who moves first? Who speaks with certainty? Who names what this moment means? No one does. Not yet. The air feels suspended, as if Rome itself is listening for a direction that has not been given.
Welcome to the Mammoth in the Room podcast, where we share real-life stories about leadership and their underlying human behavior rooted in science and research. We unpack and interpret the evolutionary forces behind it to help you to better lead your people for outstanding business results.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Mammoth in the Room, where we explore leadership lessons that stand the test of time, using history and neuroscience to explain the human behavior behind pivotal decisions. Because those same patterns still shape how leaders and their teams succeed or fail in organizations today. I'm Nicholas Bocconi, CEO of Mammoth Leadership Sciences. Inside the Senate, the silence lingers longer than expected. The conspirators remain where they stand, the surge of action already behind them, the consequence not yet clear though. What had felt decisive now feels unfinished, as though removing the man has opened a space no one knows how to fill. They had planned the act. They had not planned the aftermath. Marcus Junius Brutus searches the room for confirmation. Faces that would reflect the restoration he imagined. The Republic reasserting itself now that the center has been removed. He finds none. Only uncertainty, shared but unspoken, settling into the same space where conviction had stood. Gaius Cassius Longinus reads the moment differently. Where Brutus looks for meaning, Cassius looks for movement. He understands, more quickly than most, that power does not tolerate vacancy, and that hesitation in this moment invites someone else to define what happens next. And already someone is. Outside, reactions begin to cohere, though not in a single direction. Some celebrate, calling it liberation. Others recoil at the method, sensing that violence inside the Senate carries a cost beyond the man who has fallen. Most remain undecided, waiting to see which version of the story will take hold. Because what matters now is not only what happened, it is what people believe happened. The conspirators step forward to speak, to justify, to frame their actions in the language of the Republic. Liberty, necessity, duty. They attempt to anchor the moment in principle, to give it a shape that extends beyond the violence itself. But the words struggle to land, because the system they try to restore no longer distributes meaning the way it once did. Into that uncertainty steps Marcus Antonius, who has not been in the room when Caesar fell. He is a seasoned general, a close ally of Caesar, and a politician with a sharp instinct for the crowd. He does not confront the conspirators head-on. Instead, he positions himself carefully, asking for permission to speak, to honor Caesar, to address the people in a way that feels procedural rather than oppositional. Permission is granted, and with it, the balance begins to shift. Antony does not argue in the abstract. He tells a story. He recalls Caesar's restraint, his victories, the stability he brought to a city exhausted by conflict. He places the act within a frame that recasts it, not as the defense of the Republic, but as a rupture in something that had finally begun to hold. The crowd listens, then it moves. Sympathy gathers first. Quiet but visible. Anger follows, rising from the same uncertainty that had kept the city still. The meaning of Caesar's death is no longer controlled by those who carried it out. It is being rewritten in real time, shaped by a narrative that travels faster than any argument. The conspirators watch, and the realization comes with a clarity that leaves little room for denial. They have lost control, not of Caesar, but of what his death now represents. In the days that follow, Rome does not settle, it tilts. Alliances shift with a speed that makes intention almost irrelevant. Men who had remained neutral now choose sides, not always out of conviction, but in response to momentum. Others begin to distance themselves from the conspirators, less because they reject the act, but because they recognize where the current is moving. Momentum, not intent, begins to define outcomes. Brutus feels the gap widening between what he believed would follow and what is actually unfolding. He had acted to restore a system. Instead, he has triggered a reaction that expands beyond his ability to shape it, a chain of consequences that does not respond to his reasoning. Cassius moves to organize, to consolidate, to respond with speed. Yet even he is operating within a reality that has already shifted beyond the point where control can be easily reclaimed. Because the system they confronted has not disappeared. It has adapted quickly. And in adapting, it has found new carriers. One is Antonius, already shaping the city's emotional direction. Another, less visible but no less consequential, is Octavian, Caesar's young adopted heir, later known as Augustus, who begins to move with deliberate patience, positioning himself within a landscape that is still rearranging itself. Together, they do not represent a return, they represent continuation. The conspirators do not fully see it yet, but they feel it. The ground beneath them has changed, and the act that was meant to restore balance has accelerated the very forces they hoped to contain, pushing Rome further along a path it had already begun to take. This is where intention and outcome finally separate, because what they confronted was never only a man, it was a direction, and that direction does not reverse, it intensifies. Next time, we follow that movement to its conclusion, where the struggle for control gives way to a new structure and where the Republic, in trying to save itself, becomes something entirely different. All right, so what does this leave us today with as modern leaders? If you want to take away only two things from this episode, it would be these. First, act with extreme caution in the hours and days immediately after a decisive move. The period following a bold action is not a neutral transition. It's a vacuum in which interpretation forms rapidly, often outside your control. If you do not move quickly to define intent, align stakeholders, and establish a clear path forward, others will fill that space for you, and they will do so in ways that may be difficult to reverse. And that means that this very path forward needs to be planned, anticipated, and scenario planned before you even make your decisive first move. Never forget that. Second, recognize that narrative is not a communication layer added after the fact. It is the mechanism through which events acquire meaning and direction. In moments of disruption, leaders must do more than explain what happened. They must translate it into a coherent story that people can understand, trust, and act upon. This means being specific, visible, and consistent, engaging directly with uncertainty rather than allowing it to be shaped by others. The question for leaders is not only how to act, it is how to ensure that action is understood in a way that leads where you intended to go. All right, this was it again for today. If this episode resonated with you, whether as a leader, a student of history, or someone curious about why power unfolds the way it does, please subscribe, rate, and share it with someone in your network who would appreciate this kind of perspective. And lastly, if you're interested in more, you can order my book. It has the same title as this podcast, The Mammoth in the Room. It offers a practical roadmap for how great leaders and their teams embrace evolutionary truths for outstanding business results. And it does that in 3 sections: on people, on strategy, and on implementation. Until next time, Lead wisely, think critically, and don't let ancient instincts quietly hijack your modern leadership. I'm Nicholas Bocconi, and this is The Mammoth in the Room.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy this content, don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you on the next episode of The Mammoth in the Room.